Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Nadeina, head of growth at SaaS Group. Here, we're buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here, I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success or are in the making, in our case, right? Today with me is Patrick, founder of Frontly, an AI-powered no-code app builder, and also Curator, the simplest way, and I know you're still working on the messaging here, the simplest way to build human confirmation steps into your AI workflows. That's
Mhm.
exciting. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Very excited to chat.
Cool. Glad you're here. I've been following your LinkedIn journey and kind of like creeping around your posts for a while. So it's really cool to, put the face on on that image on LinkedIn. But yeah, before we get into both ventures, a bit of your background, like how you got to do what you were doing in the first place.
Sure. So I didn't go to university. I thought I was going to be a professional musician until I was maybe 22 years old when I realized that's really hard. And I pretty much, honestly, it's almost like I built a startup when I just couldn't make it in music. Startup was like the backup plan where I was like, all right, I guess I'll just try to create. I still didn't want a job. So I was very determined to just do something and not have a job. And then, I built my first company when I was 22. That was this late night on demand junk food delivery service. And so it was very silly. It went all right. I was able to survive off of it for about 18 to 24 months, like just under 2 years. And it really it scratched the entrepreneurial itch for me. And then after that, I was just sort of off to the races. I went and worked at two tech companies, one based in Vancouver and then one based in Victoria, where I moved after that. And so both those companies just happened to be really fast growing tech startups that did quite well, both worth hundreds of millions of dollars or more. And not to my credit, but just it was very exciting to be there. And so I couldn't help after that, just keep trying to start companies. And, that's really it. I was just out of my own desire, learning to code on YouTube back in the day. And that's how I got here.
That's super cool. What was your music gig? Where were you playing? Or what are you
Oh,
playing, I guess, still?
I still write the occasional song here and there. I play guitar, piano, and sing. I mean, theoretically.
Yeah.
Basically imagine like a poor man's Ed Sheeran is sort of what I was going for. That's yeah.
Okay. We might we're thinking about, writing a song for SaaS Group. Don't ask
Mm,
why. Like we're
interesting. A jingle.
we're just
Those work.
yes. Yeah, right? Like, because we have a retreat coming, and we thought, okay, what's the cringiest thing we could do? It's a song.
I think
I
that's
might ask
true.
for your
Yeah.
advice.
I'm in. All right. Just
Okay.
just hit me up there.
Off the record, no one can hear it.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, okay, that's a pretty great story. I mean, I love the drill. I didn't want to work, and I started my startup. It was pretty cool. But what's Frontly? I mean, I guess it's what is it? The second company you launched, right?
Uh,
After
Frontly was actually the third company. My second company was a Shopify app. It was a drop shipping marketplace, and so
right.
that was my first tech startup, and that one did pretty well. And then it was just really through that experience of building lots of software, building this pretty complicated sort of marketplace platform that I just really started to feel that burn of like, there's a lot going on here, but in terms of the user interface and a lot of the basics, it's kind of what everybody needs. Like, you need a login page, settings pages, tables and grids and forms. And it started to feel like this part isn't unique. And this feels like the recipe for a SaaS. You know, like I always thought of it as Stripe for user interfaces. That was my initial dream, was like the way that Stripe made it be that you would just never bother custom building your own payment system like ever again, because why would you bother, right? It's just like they just completely remove that from the equation of custom building, unless you're like a bank or something and then you actually need your own. And so I was thinking, well, maybe I can do that for user interfaces. Maybe Frontly could solve that problem of being the front end for SaaS startups so that they don't need to bother anymore. And it did actually sort of change a fair bit over the last couple of years, but that's at least how it started. It was just like, I didn't know no code was a thing. So I knew that I wanted to build something that was like that, like a user friendly builder, but I didn't really do a lot of research, and I only really found one company called Bubble, which is still basically the biggest one. But I didn't realize there's like dozens, if not hundreds, of no code platforms out there. So that's been really interesting the last couple of years, just sort of figuring that out.
Right. And I already said that I was creeping around your LinkedIn profile. So you shared this post about, not not doing enough validation being like one of the mistakes that you've made with Frontly. And could you maybe walk me through this a little bit, and like how we changed and how you maybe were able to turn this around to pick up pace?
Yeah, so I mean, my journey with Frontly has been pretty, I think, a bit unique. Like I basically went for about 12 months and just sort of built product. I even ended up raising a few $100,000 of funding during that time. Didn't really have any users, maybe a couple beta users, but very little. Once I raised, I realized I had to figure out how to find customers. And I hadn't really done sales before. I was a very sort of product-minded person. Didn't even really like the idea of doing sales, to be honest, all the confrontation and pestering people and stuff like that. So I think I got lucky because I got introduced to this platform called AppSumo, which is this whole lifetime deal marketplace. They basically just promote software deals. And, I wasn't really sure. I think, there's sort of a variety of qualities of software on there. I wasn't sure if we sort of fit the mold. But once I, talked to them, I realized I could actually do a free launch on AppSumo where I basically just listed it myself in their marketplace, almost like listing on Product Hunt in some sense, except for it's not just like a one-day race to the top. It's just sort of like you're just in this marketplace. And we ended up getting 5,000 free signups in 2 months. And so for someone who hadn't really had any product validation yet or users, that was just a dream come true. It was like, okay, this can start becoming a real thing now, and it wasn't a lot of revenue. I was able to upsell some of those users, even though it was a free offer. But the catch was that they were all from AppSumo, and so they all wanted lifetime deals. I'd never done a lifetime deal, like the one-time payment for software, the way that I used to pay for, Photoshop or something back in, the early 2000s. And so I actually wasn't interested at the start, and I thought, no, you guys should buy subscriptions. But they were just adamant that that's what they wanted. And at the end of the day, I was just wanting that early revenue. So I basically caved in, started kind of doing kind of one-off personal deals with the people who were just requesting it. And then that whole free plan on AppSumo went so well that they contacted me. And then we did 2 consecutive, like fully promoted paid campaigns on AppSumo and ended up selling, I think, like at least $500,000 on those 2 campaigns. And so that's kind of how things got started. I mean, I would say that that's not the normal path, and it didn't really result in a lot of recurring revenue. And so, it created a lot of upfront funding that early stage startups would rarely be able to generate. If you're lucky, you're getting, MRR earning a couple hundred a month and then maybe a couple thousand a month, but like getting, hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's like a funding round. So anyway, that was like my big traction at the start. And then after that, I was able to learn a bit more about who these customers were and, learn about the market through the customers.
That's pretty great. Yeah, I've heard a few stories that also, were kind of in the same narrative. Like maybe, it doesn't go to be like your big upsell case, and it doesn't really show in your MRR later, but it's like you said, it's almost like an investment round. So you get this runway and then you're able to bootstrap your way through. But you also offer lifetime deals now. And that's what I was wondering about, because like you're a bit further down the road now and you got a co-founder, and this is something I'm also very curious about. But yeah, I kind of always thought, lifetime deals is something that very early stage companies do for validation and to get the runway they need to like, develop it further. How does it work for you like further down the road?
Well, I think probably the most important thing to consider for anyone who is thinking about lifetime deals versus MRR, like MRR is great and everybody loves it because, especially investors, because it seems very predictable. And of course, that's assuming that you don't have customer churn, right? So I actually maybe have a unique perspective because my previous startup, which was the Shopify app, we had quite a lot of customers who were really just kind of checking it out, would pay for a few months, and then they would churn. and it was 100% organic free traffic coming into us through the app store. So we got very comfortable with this idea that we would literally churn 30% of our customers every month, but we would also replace them and more. And we had growth for years. So it's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm comfortable with the whole MRR isn't like a permanent thing. And I think that for Frontly, at least what I learned through this AppSumo situation is that a lot of our users are, they're hobbyists, they're very small businesses that are just trying to learn about app development, building their own little tools. And so it's a market where I can really imagine that if we were reliant on them paying us monthly subscriptions, a lot of them might churn after 2 months or 3 months. And so if you look at our current offer, which is like the $500 for life, that's, if you look at that as like a $30 a month subscription or something, that's a lot of months of locked in MRR. So I think that on paper, it doesn't look like MRR, and it's not, but I think the actual net outcome might even be better. It's just not investor friendly. It doesn't look really exciting, and it doesn't go like up and to the right like this permanently. It's more like big lumps, which is kind of a weird thing, but I've had a lot of fun with it. And, we do have some MRR. It's just not everyone wants to pay $500 up front. So it's almost like, it's just something that we did. And to be honest, I think we just kind of went so far down that path. It's almost hard to turn back on it now.
Yeah, I've been just yesterday. I had this podcast with a founder who's solving, the pricing and packaging problem for founders. So we discussed pricing and packaging with him, and he said now, especially with AI and with so much of saturation on the market, it's such a problem. A lot of people are trying to figure out what to do because, a lot of companies have started focusing on their profitability. So, pricing and packaging is something that's a very unique kind of problem right now, and pretty much everyone's facing it. So it's really fun how you're solving it for yourself.
Well, I think like the other way to look at it is, when I when I built the company, like I said, I didn't really know there were quite a lot of competitors. And so there are a few in particular. Softer and Glide are sort of our two closest, like in the product sense, very close competitors. They've both raised, I think, at least like 20 million or something like that. And so, just in a pure sort of ratio sense, they're just so much more well funded than us. And at a certain point, it's like, do I even want to try to just go head to head and try to convince their customers that we're better? Like there's just so much, we're such a small team and they have so much funding that at a certain point I just realized, what, if we keep offering lifetime deals, we don't really have to compete with them at all. Like we have a lot of users who obviously love the platform, and they wouldn't just stay for the lifetime deal, a lot of them, but some would, and some would even convert over for the lifetime deal, and they have. So I think right now, even if it just makes us a thorn in the side of our competitors, it's almost just kind of funny. It's just like, I don't love sales, so it just makes it easier for me to be able to offer this, and it's a pretty low friction way to get revenue. So
Doesn't it make it a bit more unpredictable in terms of like what you can spend on marketing or what you can spend on development, because it's a bit unpredictable, like when is the next lump coming?
definitely, yeah. I mean, that's a challenge. We're always like looking ahead and saying, oh, we have this much runway, but then we always seem to be able to. It seems like that amount of runway never ends. It's like always this much more, which is funny. But one thing that's actually interesting though about marketing is for lifetime deals. Like imagine, the immediate ROI of a paid ad campaign that returns 500 USD in one moment. Whereas normally, when I worked at other startups, when they were running their Google ads, for example, they would say, well, our projected lifetime value is X, let's say. So, we can spend this much. But they have to have a lot of funding because they need to wait 12 months to even recoup that first year's worth of revenue. So for us, it actually does allow us to do that. And we have been experimenting with paid ads. And I think probably there are other companies, I imagine, that have figured that out too. So it just depends. It's just a different type of growth, I think. And obviously depends on the outcome that you're looking for.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That's great. Great that it works for you. I mean, that's kind of the main point here, right? But I wanted to ask you about the co-founder. You just recently announced that you've got a co-founder, and all this time you've been a solo founder. What
Yes.
has changed?
It's a great question. So, I mean, I had a co-founder in my previous startup, and it was just a very different type of startup. Like I said, we were on the Shopify App Store, so we sort of had the whole like sales marketing side kind of just almost handled for us through the marketplace. And so it's a problem that I never really had to confront. We did the marketing in terms of like writing the copy on our landing page and stuff like that, but I didn't have to do outbound sales ever. Never even had to think about it. And so very, very different situation with Frontly. We were not in a marketplace. It was just, I mean, AppSumo ended up being our, sort of launching off point. But I accepted that a startup is, let me put it like this. I really used to believe before I started Frontly that a startup was essentially a product. Like that the technology, I'm a technology guy, I'm a coder, I love that stuff. And I really just thought if you build a product, you have a startup. And now I really truly believe that a startup is a group of people who are, coming together to create something. And so I learned that the hard way because I don't really like sales. I like the whole, product led idea a lot more, but in reality, having someone on my side who I can trust, who can really lean into that whole sales side of things, who likes it, I eventually just accepted that that was something that would probably benefit me. And I've known that for a while now, but Scott, my new co-founder, we met when he was running sales at another company, and so we became friends. And at the right moment, I said to him, "Hey, you should come and help me." And to be honest, I don't even remember the exact pitch that I had for him because there's Frontly, and then we were starting to talk about other startup ideas, which eventually evolved into Curator. And so I think we just trusted each other, and it almost was like when an investor says they're just sort of investing in the founder and not the startup or the product. In this case, I think we just knew that together we could probably do something really interesting. We have Frontly, and now we're trying to build Curator too. So I would definitely recommend having a co-founder, but I think everyone just has to be really honest about their strengths, their weaknesses, and maybe even more importantly, their preferences, because I just don't really want to do sales. You can't just ignore that forever. Like you need to find someone who wants to do the thing that you hate, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even if you're doing the whole product led growth, you still need to know the technicalities of a sale. So, how this process works and, how people think before they buy something.
Yeah, there's a whole world of sales psychology that, I think
Yeah.
everything that I know about business and startups is just from doing stuff. And so I won't pretend to be an expert on really anything other than just doing lots of stuff. And so I think having someone on my team that like really thinks about that part is really nice. I think we both fill gaps that, either of us might have. So yeah, it feels great so far. I mean, it's only been a few
Yeah.
months, but we're both really excited about it.
And how big is the team?
So right now the team is 4 people. So
Mhm.
nice and small. We've kind of always kept it lean. And the funny thing is, as time goes on, maybe a good segue talking about AI and no code and all that, like, it does, like, I don't really look ahead, even right now, building Curator, getting traction. I don't even really think, okay, I'm getting ready to hire my next developer. Like, I actually, that's not really on my mind anymore. I mean, I've spent about 10 years gaining some mastery over the ability to build a product. And so I feel pretty confident about that part. But I used to always think, okay, at a certain scale, we're going to go hire a bunch of engineers. We might, maybe a few if it goes really well. But like I feel like that's changing a lot. And so, I think keeping it as lean as possible is absolutely the right way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, since you mentioned AI already, and I have to ask that, and, it might not be a very comfortable question because it's about the essence of a business that you're building. But no code, we've been talking about it for what AI is doing to no code, and if there is a chance that AI is going to make no code obsolete because it's just getting so much easier. I mean, for God's sakes, I can code something. And I thought ones and zeros is what you have to learn to code.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what do you think about this? How does it affect you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, let's say rewind to 2 years ago when GTP 3 came out. That was a big moment for a lot of people. Or was it 3.5? I've lost track. The numbers don't matter, but 2 years of OpenAI essentially. And first I started wondering, okay, what can I do with this? Can I generate apps with it? Should I let people build apps that use AI? And I've sort of oscillated between those two paths. And we've done both, of course, with Frontly. We have an AI app generator where you type in a bit about what you're trying to do. We take you through this flow. You get sort of a starter app. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you can integrate OpenAI generation into your apps. So, you can summarize data and all that, some kind of wrapper. And those were the sort of initial steps. But I definitely took a step back, probably as long as even a year ago now. And I thought, okay, let's think about the future. Let's think about where this is going, because, it's a lot of work building a startup and you always want to make sure you're kind of on the cutting edge. And I think my honest truth about no code is thinking, okay, I believe that static interfaces like a table and a form and these very rudimentary kind of things that we see, basically SaaS dashboards, I think those are going to become less relevant. And I think that the AI system itself will be the logic. And I think it will present you with a dynamically generated interface at the times where it's necessary. And when it's not necessary, it will just be doing things behind the scenes. I had that vision a year ago when I was trying to just really be thinking ahead. And then I've spent the last year thinking a lot more and learning a lot more about the current automation platforms that are out there. And I started to believe even more, okay, these platforms like Zapier and Make and some of those kinds of platforms, obviously there's some other ones that are really trying to be like AI agenty kind of platforms. I think they're all, the ones that have the most integrations are very well positioned to be the brain of modern software. And I think that, part of this truth is what led me to start working on Curator, because Curator is taking this approach to be more of like a dynamic interface that sort of appears when you need it and then disappears into the background and is basically asked for by your automation. And I think that's kind of my mental journey, is just that AI is going to do a lot of that in between. I don't think that in the future, you won't want to sit and look at a table of data and then say, I'm going to filter it. It's like, why even start with the table? Just tell the AI what out of this data set you're trying to look at or interact with or summarize. I think we just won't have that first part at all. So that's what I think. I don't know what that means for all of the no-code platforms. I think we're all going to just keep trying to evolve to be some part of that. That's my take.
That makes great sense. And how much, since, I just started thinking, because you're 4 people, how much of AI are you guys using for your workflow, like automating, making sure that you keep it lean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can, safely say that a solid 30% of my code is actively written by AI. Not necessarily my whole code base because it spans a couple of years, but using Cursor, which is my preferred code editor right now. I mean, it's incredible. It's just in real time, you get to a point where you write a few lines of meaningful code and then it just starts suggesting all the things you were going to do. And you just keep hitting tab and you're just in awe watching it essentially write the code you were about to write. And then sometimes it's not perfect, but like I would say its suggestions are probably right, maybe even like 70% of the time at this point. And it's really just getting started. So I am insanely optimistic about that side of things, like writing code being enhanced by AI. And then of course, we use Intercom for our support chat for Frontly. And so there's this AI chatbot. It gives us some metrics on like what percentage of conversations are deflected by AI that never end up going through a human. And it's pretty substantial, like definitely double digits percentages, probably 30 or 40% or something like that. So it's, we're all everything's just getting started. And I think we're already seeing massive gains from that. But now we're getting into automation and all these automation platforms and stuff like that. So I think the future of keeping teams lean is quite bright. And I've seen a lot of people talking about that too, right? You see the post on LinkedIn that says the $1-person billion-dollar startup and stuff like that. I don't agree with that because I do think a small, trustworthy team is worth a lot. But beyond that, I think you could do a lot with automation and AI.
Yeah, it was so funny. Like we had our all hands and in a SaaS group, and we had this one like icebreaker question, like what is the skill or habit that you want to learn in 2025? And I think, I don't know, maybe like 2 people out of a bunch did not mention learning AI and like automating their workflows and stuff like that. Everyone wants an in. It's really fascinating.
It's a big deal. I mean, I've had a few people ask me like, hey, I want to get into tech. like I'm thinking about taking this boot camp or something like that, I just say, go learn all the no code and AI tools and don't learn like custom code right now. I'm not saying that having some coding skills wouldn't help you get a little bit of a leg up, but yeah, we're past that. It's too late, I think, to start just like learning JavaScript. I think we're past that.
JavaScript is dead. It's going to be the headline
Don't quote me on that.
of this one.
I don't want angry people.
Okay, well, let's talk about Curator. I'm curious why you decided to do it in the first place. Like, I mean, Frontly grew out of your own problem with your second startup, and is Curator kind of sprouted out of something that you're experiencing with Frontly, or is it just for fun?
Yeah. Curator is based on an experience or experiences that I've had really the last 2 years of trying to what I would call wrangle AI into submission. It's like I built the AI app generator for Frontly, and I probably built about 7 different versions of it, trying all these different tactics. And it doesn't help or it doesn't hurt that the models are getting better. Every 6 months they release a new model, and you go, okay, maybe I have to try that thing I tried 6 months ago and see if that works now. And so that's a whole other thing. But at the end of the day, even if the structure of your AI generated content is correct, which is something that was a lot easier now with the modern models, the content is still unpredictable. And I'm not sure when that's going to be solved. And I think it almost comes back to this sort of existential layer where it's like, let's say you're generating a blog post. It's like 10 paragraphs or something like that. Well, it might be really great and it might be, really knowledgeable, but it might not be what you wanted. Like you as the human are the singular judge of what quality is. And so that's where it's a problem. Like AI is trained on essentially Wikipedia and all this data. It's trained on the most average data. So it's going to write you the world's most generic blog post on the topic that you asked it to. And so that's not necessarily a great thing. And so I guess in Frontly's app generator, I realized that if you try to take a user's explanation of the app they're trying to generate and you just try to go right to the end and just generate the whole thing for them, it's going to make enough little mistakes all along the way that by the time they get to the end, it's actually kind of difficult to undo. It's like the fabric of it has already been laid and then it's added layers on top of that. And so with Frontly's AI generator, I ended up splitting it up into 6 distinct steps where it sort of generates like the names of your database tables. And then you see that and you can actually visually, just in a plain text editor, basically just change the names. And then once you confirm that, then it generates the actual data tables. And so it does that in 6 different layers until you get to an app that has multiple pages, tables and forms and those kinds of things on it. And then because it's Frontly, all of those are fully functional right away. But the process of getting there, I realized if we don't let the users like sort of confirm and even revise little bits of it along the way, we're building on top of data that isn't necessarily correct. I sort of had that epiphany after trying so many different ways of doing it. And then Curator was essentially the idea of what if I could, what if that's a bigger problem that goes way beyond, like I just couldn't even imagine that everybody isn't dealing with this problem, everyone that's trying to generate anything with AI. And so I wanted to find a way to let people sort of add this human confirmation layer essentially anywhere and as many times as they need to into their existing AI flows. And so instead of trying to build a whole platform for generating AI internally, we decided to build one that would work with all of the Zapiers and Makes and all the automation platforms that everybody's already doing automations in. So that's kind of how Curator started. And so it really is truly just an extension of Frontly and that process of AI generation. But yeah, so we're pretty optimistic about the need for human approvals and human confirmation in AI. And I think it's going to essentially open up a lot of companies who are afraid to adopt AI because they believe, and rightfully so, that AI is unpredictable. And so I think we can solve that problem, and that's essentially what we're working on.
Interesting. When I first read about it on LinkedIn, my mind immediately went to something like, okay, so say I'm writing a blog post and my manager say needs to make sure that, I don't screw up and say, I use the AI. I don't. I do. Just a little.
Of course not. Yeah.
But yeah, they need to make sure that, I don't screw up and AI doesn't screw up. And that's kind of the use case. So I thought it's more, you know, maybe because I'm in marketing and that's just where my mind goes first. But yeah,
Yeah.
we were talking about a bit of a different case.
Well, I mean, that's a totally valid case, and it's definitely what we see. Let me give a better example of like we've actually had a few of our customers in the last like 2 weeks that we've talked to who have a very similar case, which is essentially they're, let's say, like a marketing agency. They're managing social content or marketing content for clients, and they want essentially an approval flow where whenever they're ready to submit content to their clients, it goes through this portal, the clients are notified, or they log in and they have this nice review dashboard, and they can just go through, review, approve, deny. If it's like text-based content, they could even edit it as well in there. And then the kind of cool thing is that it's connected to your automation platform if you want it to be. So when they approve it, it doesn't just say, yes, it's approved. It can actually go and be posted, or it can go and, do something with it. It's something meaningful. And so even in your case, you could have an approval flow, and you could set up the approval flow so that a team member with this role of writer has access to do this. And then someone else can leave comments, but they're not the final reviewer. And then there's someone like the manager level who has the final authority. And when they hit approve, it actually goes live, or it goes, to the final storage or something like that. So I think we're early enough that we're kind of keeping an open mind. We're definitely leaning into the general premise of human approval layers in AI generated content and automations. And we're just kind of having fun talking to customers and learning all the different things. But there are some common themes so far.
That's pretty great. Yeah, I would love to see how it works. But I also wanted to ask you about your pricing. And we had a really funny moment before we hit the record button because I went to research about your pricing and it was usage based and it was like a week ago. And this morning I went there and I'm like, huh, that changed. So so
Sure
you're
did.
still trying to yeah, to figure it out. But okay, so where have you landed this week from usage based to what and why? Because I'm talking to quite a few people on like pricing. Last month we had a full month of pricing webinars for SaaS group because again everyone's trying to see how AI is going to change their pricing and packaging and stuff like that. So yeah, you're changing pretty rapidly.
Hmm.
How you're doing it, what's the process for you?
So the original premise was also, kind of just throwing out pricing because we were sort of just getting started talking to users and we just needed to have some pricing and we wanted to be approachable. And that's still the goal. I think there's a lot of pretty arbitrary pricing tier plans out there in the world where it's like, oh, you got to have 7 of these and 16 of these. And it's just like, I don't know. Don't force me into these awkwardly shaped plans. That I still align with. And so originally we were going to do it on literally just a per approval basis. So like an individual instance of you submitting something to your manager, let's say, and them approving it or whatever, or, you revising an AI generated LinkedIn comment and then hitting confirm. That was going to be one approval, which is very needed, by the way, in this world of LinkedIn. But now I think that the fine line for usage based, I think, is you have to be honest with yourself. Obviously, for the customer, it's amazing if they're literally only paying for the exact, like only when they're using it, right? Just like a gift card that you stock up and you only spend $1 when you spend it and it never expires. That's a dream. But the thing that we realize is to be realistic. Like there's a service that we're providing all the time, which is customer support, server hosting, maintenance. Like there's more going on than just those moments. And even if maybe on average, the sort of per one-off approval might balance out, I think a low price subscription as a starting point, right now we have it at $20 a month for the base price, and then it's $10 per, we're going to call it an approval or approval workflow, something like that. So it's essentially, it's not so based on those little things. It's more of like, if you need this many different workflows, that's what you're going to pay. And we're not going to force you into a bundle at this point. So I think it's still fairly usage based, but it's just a little bit, if we have a customer that loves our product and wants to use it, we would love to earn some recurring revenue. We don't want to just, we had a customer who bought like a $10 credit bundle and we were excited about it, but it's like maybe they'll just, that's it. They can just use it for a while now, and that's fine. There's no real issue with that. It's just like thinking again about the lessons I learned from Frontly and lifetime deals. I think it's probably worth trying to at least build revenue that feels as aligned with customers as we can while also creating sustainable recurring revenue.
So you're not planning to offer lifetime deals on Curator just yet?
Not just yet. I mean, to be honest, it's something we've considered it just because it was so successful for Frontly. I think there are definitely pros and cons, but knowing what I know, I would definitely do it very differently. I mean, with Frontly, we kind of just kept offering them forever, on and off here and there. I think for now, our goal is to just build that recurring revenue, but who knows? Could be a good way to just get some rapid adoption in the market and then shift over. Like that's basically what you had inferred earlier. You're saying it seems like a good early stage tactic, and then you kind of shift out of it. I think that's probably true. I think that is probably the right way to do it. We just didn't do it that way with Frontly. So yeah.
Who knows what's right? It's
Who
working.
knows?
But yeah, I was again just referring to one of my podcasts that I did yesterday, by the way. And one of the founders said, one of my goals in 2025 is to double my income. And it's very easy to do if I just spend 1 hour of every day on marketing. And I thought it's such a like a well, in a way, like basic thought for founders, right? But like you said, you're very focused on the product, and sometimes it feels like, okay, it's product led, then
Yeah.
let the product do the job. So yeah, if you're doing it differently with Curator, like what are you doing? Like what's the strategy? How are you pushing it out into the world?
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm actually having fun with sales and learning. I'm learning to like it because for one, I didn't realize sales in 2025 is nerdy as heck. Like it's so software based. You build lists, you're like narrowing down keywords, and it's like so much of it is that. And I think the real sort of, when I made my post the other day about sort of targeting and targeting customers and why that's so important and some of those lessons I learned with Frontly, I think that's the real lesson here, is that when you are building a startup that actually is targeting a somewhat specific audience, the sales and that whole aspect is so much easier, because now I think the only thing that's hard about sales is finding the right people, right? Like, if to have a real conversation with someone who genuinely has the problem you're solving, like if you have that conversation and your product is okay, you'll probably find a lot of customers. Like if you can just repeat that, that's the hard part, especially in today's AI generated sales emails world, which we're not doing. We're not doing that part yet. I mean, surely we will, but right now we're just, we're using all the tools we can to find AI and automation agencies, because they're the kind of people who are always looking for new tools. So they're not afraid. It's not like some ancient business that's like, oh, I don't know, it might take 6 months to approve this. Agencies they're usually pretty small. Maybe it's one person or a handful of people, and they have lots of clients. So they're always, that even makes it easier, I think, for them to say, okay, we'll try this tool with our next client. Or, we've had people that are like, I have a client right now and we need this approval flow, and we're gonna, they're like excited to try it right away. So we're just doing a combination of outbound email and LinkedIn messages and that kind of thing. And of course, I'm starting to post more content, mostly for my own selfish reasons, which is I just, I want to just get into creating content. I think that in sort of an AI generated world, humans and having a brand and having that kind of content is probably going to be one of the only things left once software is just completely automated for all of us by AI. But yeah, so our strategies are very basic right now. I think we're already learning so much from talking to our early customers. The first 10 to 20 calls that we've done have been so informative, which is also partially why we changed our pricing pretty quickly. We realized we literally had our first paid customer tell us to raise our prices. So that's actually what
Okay.
started that. We had that other pricing and they said, this is too cheap. You guys should raise this. So of course they get the good price, but everyone else, sorry.
All right. Well, I'm really curious what you're going to do next. And, it's fun to watch what you're writing about on LinkedIn. I get really curious and interested in what you're doing. That's why you're here. Just the last couple of questions for the pod, the usuals. You can talk about just Curator, just doing it now, or take into account all the ventures that you've built? But yeah, what so far has been the biggest win and the biggest failure? Can be for a company or, your personal founder journey.
I mean, oh man, yeah, there's so many. I think realistically, I just realized just today that I'm basically at the 10-year anniversary of starting my first startup. And so thinking about that, I mean, I've been really shifting my mindset, and my win has been just the massive amount of, I mean, really confidence that I've gained. Like I'm not wealthy. I run a startup. It's always scrappy. And, maybe one day I've never had like a big exit or anything like that. So, I'm still just getting by in life, and I have no fears at all about my future. And like, I don't have the savings to back that up. It's just the skills and the experience that I've gained from 10 years of just hacking around. I think that's so valuable. And so I feel like honestly my biggest win is just lately, as I've been, getting a little bit older, starting to really think about, why am I doing these things? Why am I building startups? Like, it's pretty stressful, but I guess it's just that independence and just that feeling that like, I'm not afraid of, I mean, I can't be fired because I'm my own boss, but like, even if I had a boss, I don't think I'd be afraid of getting fired, because I just know that I'm excited about building stuff. And so I don't have that big exit to brag about at this point, but right now I think that everything I've gained from building startups is worth a lot. And hopefully I'll be able to prove that with building Curator and my next startup and startup after that.
There is a lot more coming. Any
Mm-hmm.
failures or, biggest learning?
Lots of failures. I mean, my first startup, which we hit, we were at 1 million in ARR, and we were bootstrapped, and it was great. We were making almost 50,000 a month in profit, which for a software startup was pretty awesome. And it was like our first tech startup, so very lucky, I think. And it was within 3 years we got to that point. So it was just the whole rise was so great. And we did unfortunately sort of base the business on the Shopify marketplace. And so, very delicate situation where a few algorithmic changes affected our rate of installs. And, that it just made it a lot harder to keep replacing those customers that I was talking about, these customers that would maybe stay for a couple months. And so that business is still going, but just the dynamic has changed. And so we were really close to opportunities to be able to sell the business at a nice multi-million dollar valuation. And so as a startup founder, I think I've just kind of got that chip on my shoulder, or whatever they say, like I'm still building to try to create something great. So I feel like I've kind of had the full arc. I know what it's like to have a company that was doing really well and had all this growth. And I know what it's like to have a company that's just really not having that same trajectory, and kind of everything in between.
All right. Yeah, that's a good learning. But I love the spirit. So
Thank you.
that makes it even more interesting to follow through. But okay, the last one is always about a hack. And it can be just, anything about your personal journey, or, it can be something very like technical, I don't know, growth hack, or I don't know, AI tool that we all absolutely have to check out.
Hmm. I think mine's going to be less exciting, more about my sort of founder journey. Lately, like even in the last month, I've been, I'm always reflecting, especially with the new year. I guess I can't help but just sort of reflect on my goals. And I actually just keep telling myself, none of this matters. And it's so relaxing. It's just because as a founder, you just get so caught up. I literally have to tell myself, hey, you invented all of this. No one in the world asked you to create this. You decided this should exist. So if it gets hard or whatever, I got in this because I like challenges. You don't start a startup because you think it's going to be easy. And so I need to remember that. And I think for whatever reason, that mantra of just being like, hey, you created this, like pretty much like you created this and you could destroy this. Like it's almost like just kind of be at peace and realize I love this. I love the game, and I'm going to be working and probably building startups till I'm in my 60s. And so I actually don't feel the need to figure it out right now. I'm okay with not having my, retirement fund in the bank. I think it's going to be okay, as long as I stay healthy and stuff like that. So of course I'm thinking about that stuff a little bit too.
All right, that's great, and that's a great way to finish that interview too, because it's. I think, yeah, it's the new year, and it's also just the last couple of years have been so hard and turbulent for a lot of founders that I've had a bunch of conversations about mental health and community and finding mentors and somebody to rely on in this journey. So yeah, I think just kind of having a bit of a chill approach to this,
Yeah.
it sounds refreshing.
Well, and that's part of why also why I wanted to have a co-founder again, because it's just, I realized it actually is really hard. And, it's a
Yeah.
little easier to take a step back when you have a co-founder. You can just be like, hey, we're just, at least we're in this together, right? That helps.
Absolutely. All right. Well, like I said, I will be looking forward to seeing what you guys are building together now and following on the story. And I was just reading about your first startup with the snacking business, and I loved how it was like late night snacks. And I thought, oh my God, I would love that now because
it
it was late night.
it was yeah, it was very silly, but it was a really good way to start my startup career.
Yeah, you've got quite a story. So thank you so much for sharing it here. It's been a blast chatting with
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much. I really appreciate the time to chat.
Absolutely. Anytime. And take care.